Have you ever sat alone at night and suddenly heard that old Beatles song, "Let It Be"? Just a few notes are enough to make the heart soften, like someone whispering right into your ear. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. It's such a simple lyric, yet it carries a strange kind of power. Many people hear it for comfort, a way to get through a weary day. But if we pause just a little longer, listen a little deeper, we begin to see. Hidden in those words is a truth the Buddha taught more than 2,500 years ago. That happiness doesn't come from controlling every detail of life. It doesn't come from forcing things to bend to our will. Real happiness comes when we learn to accept, to let go, and to smile at what is already here, in this very moment. I believe whether you're 30, 50, or even 80, we've all known loss. A loved one passing, a dream fading, a relationship that slipped away. And we realize what hurts the most is not always the event itself, but our resistance to it, that unwillingness inside us to let go. On this journey, I want to walk with you through some of Buddhism's core teachings on suffering, impermanence, letting go, mindfulness, and patience. Not so we can escape life, but so we can live it more deeply, with greater freedom and greater peace. So, let's begin. Have you ever paused for a moment and noticed how many times the world around you changes in just a single day? In the morning, sunlight spills through the window and fills the room with warmth. By afternoon, dark clouds gather and the sky turns grey. And by evening, everything sinks into night. Things change constantly without asking for anyone's permission. This is impermanence. In the language of Buddhism, it's called anicca, the truth that everything is always changing. Nothing stands still. Not a single moment is ever the same as the one before it. We all know this on some level. We know the body grows old, hair turns grey, and strength fades. We see trees shed their leaves, autumn giving way to winter, then spring returning again. And yet, even with this knowledge, our hearts still resist. We want to stay young forever. We want love to freeze at its most beautiful moment. We want our work to always go smoothly, our lives never to shift. And it's here, right here, that suffering begins. Imagine standing by a river. You scoop up a handful of water, hoping to keep just a little of its coolness, but the tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Life is like that, always flowing, never waiting. The more tightly we hold, the more exhausted we become. I remember the first time I lost someone I loved. It felt like a terrifying emptiness. I kept wishing for just one more day, one more hour. But time doesn't answer our pleading. It only flows on, leaving behind a hollow space in the heart. And I realized what hurt the most wasn't the loss itself, but the way my mind kept fighting against the truth of change. The Buddha taught, it is not impermanence that causes suffering. It is our resistance to impermanence. A love that ends doesn't necessarily shatter us. What truly breaks us is refusing to accept that the other has changed, that the journey together has reached its end. A dream that fails isn't always tragedy. The real tragedy is our refusal to let go, forcing ourselves to live inside a version of life that no longer exists. But impermanence, when seen with new eyes, can also be a gift. Think about it. If sorrow lasted forever, how could we endure it? If anger never faded, could we ever breathe again? Because of impermanence, sadness softens, anger dissolves, and even deep wounds have the chance to heal. Impermanence makes life more precious. A sunset moves us because it vanishes so quickly. A flower captivates us because we know it will soon wither. A hand we hold feels sacred because we don't know if it will be there tomorrow. If nothing ever changed, would flowers still be beautiful? Would sunsets still take our breath away? Would love still stir the heart? It is their fragility that makes them priceless. So impermanence is not an enemy. It is the heartbeat, the breath, the pulse of life itself. We suffer when we resist it, like trying to fight against the tide of the sea. But if, just once, we surrender and let the wave carry us, we may find it is not frightening at all. It is simply carrying us from one moment to the next. Living with impermanence is not easy. In the face of loss, who doesn't want to cling? But in that very moment, if we pause, take a deep breath, and whisper to ourselves, "This is the nature of life. Everything is flowing." A small peace appears in the heart, a quiet place to stand even in the middle of the storm. Someone once asked me, if everything is impermanent, then why love at all? Why get attached? I smiled and said, because impermanence is exactly what makes love precious. A conversation may be the last one. That's why it becomes priceless. A smile, a glance, a quiet afternoon on the porch, these become gifts precisely because they are fleeting. Impermanence teaches us to cherish. It reminds us not to wait until tomorrow to live, not to postpone happiness for some distant day. It invites us to live fully, here and now. So when I hear, "Let it be," I don't hear surrender. I hear an invitation to smile at life, to smile at its changes, because it is those very changes that give this existence its meaning. Do you remember the last time you truly suffered? Maybe it was the day you lost someone dear, or when a dream suddenly collapsed. Or maybe it was simply an afternoon sitting alone, feeling an emptiness you couldn't name. The truth is, no matter who you are, where you live, or how much money you have in the bank, suffering will find its way to you. The Buddha called this the first noble truth. Life is suffering. At first, it sounds pessimistic, but the Buddha wasn't being negative. He was simply pointing us toward reality. In this human life, none of us can escape loss, sickness, disappointment, or death. And here's the remarkable thing about Buddhism. The Buddha didn't stop at describing suffering. He went further. He showed us its cause. This is the second noble truth. Suffering has a cause, and that cause isn't the world outside of us. It lies within our own hearts, in our clinging, our craving, our refusal to accept impermanence. Think of a love that ended. Was the deepest pain the fact that the person left? Or was it the constant whisper inside you, if only, the wish that everything could go back to how it once was? Think of a dream that didn't come true. Was it the failure itself that hurt, or was it the way you held onto the picture of success you had painted, refusing to accept another path? We often believe, if only I had more money, more love, more recognition, then I'd be happy. But the Buddha said that this very way of thinking is what makes us suffer, because everything we cling to is impermanent, and when it changes, as it inevitably will, we hurt. But here's the good news. The Buddha didn't stop there either. He gave us the third noble truth. Suffering can end, not by running away, not by covering it up, but by letting go of attachment. When the mind is no longer bound by greed, anger, and ignorance, suffering dissolves. And then comes the fourth noble truth, the path, the eightfold path, a way of living with wisdom, ethics, and mindfulness that slowly frees the heart to live in peace right here, right now. I love the example many teachers use. Imagine standing in a dark room. You flail your arms, punch the air, but the darkness remains. Then you light a single lamp, and everything becomes clear. That is the nature of suffering. When we can't see it, it feels overwhelming. But when we recognize suffering and its cause, it's like lighting the lamp. We begin to see the way forward. Suffering is no longer the enemy. It becomes the teacher. It shows us what we're clinging to. It gives us the chance to release and to learn how to live again. And this is what I want you to notice. When the Beatles sang, "Let It Be," isn't that also an invitation? A reminder to accept, to let go, to trust that the answer will come. In the hardest moments, our instinct is often, "I must fight this. I must fix it right now." But sometimes, wisdom lies in pausing and softly whispering, "It's okay. Let it be." In that very moment, a door opens. We stop forcing, stop resisting, and begin to see the light. Yes, I know hearing life is suffering can feel heavy, but it's not a complaint. It's a map that leads us from pain to peace, from darkness into light. The Buddha never promised a life without pain. He promised a path, a way to live with pain without being imprisoned by it, a way to face loss and change and still smile, because there is another way. And this journey begins with a simple but profound truth. Life contains suffering. See it, accept it, and from there begin to walk. Have you noticed how much of our life is spent resisting the present moment? When it rains, we wish for Sunday. When we're forced to wait, we grow restless. When things don't go our way, irritation rises. The truth is, suffering often doesn't come from the situation itself. It comes from that little voice inside whispering, "This isn't how it should be." That is resistance to the present. One of the most important lessons in Buddhism is this: only when we learn to fully accept this moment as it is, can we discover peace. Think of the last time you were stuck in traffic. You had two choices. First, you could fume, pound the steering wheel, think over and over, "I'm late. Why now of all times?" But no matter how you think it, the cars won't move faster. You just end up with a pounding heart, tense hands, and an aching mind. Or second, you take a slow breath, put on a soft piece of music, and tell yourself, "All right, I've been given a few extra minutes to breathe, to observe, to just be." The situation is the same, but the experience inside of you is entirely different. That is the power of acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It means opening to reality, seeing it as it is instead of forcing it to match our desires. I once met an older gentleman on a meditation retreat. He told me his whole life he had been quick-tempered, always wanting things to be faster, better. But when he retired and his health began to fail, he realized he could no longer control his body. At first, it felt bitter. Then, one day, as he sat breathing, he thought, "Maybe my body is simply teaching me a lesson. Slow down. Let things be as they are." From then on, he practiced acceptance. And he said, the more he accepted, the lighter his heart became, and even his illness felt easier to bear. When we accept the present, we stop wasting energy in resistance. That energy becomes available to live more deeply. A cup of hot tea is no longer just a drink. It becomes a moment to truly feel the warmth, the fragrance, the gentle taste on the tongue. An afternoon with a loved one is no longer time passing. It becomes a sacred moment to listen, to see their eyes, to know you are still here together. Acceptance also teaches us to let go of comparison. How often we suffer from questions like, why do they have what I don't? Why am I not there yet? But the truth is, each life unfolds in its own rhythm. Flowers bloom in their season, roses in spring, chrysanthemums in autumn. None is too late or too early. All are right on time, and so are we. There's a saying I love, "This moment is enough." It doesn't mean we stop dreaming or striving. It simply reminds us that even as we strive, this moment is worthy of being lived fully. The Beatles sang, "There will be an answer, let it be." That's what acceptance whispers. You don't need the answer right away. Life unfolds in its own rhythm. Some answers only appear when we stop demanding them. If you've ever meditated, you know this well. The mind races to yesterday and tomorrow, but when you return to the breath, one inhale, one exhale, you realize the present moment is already full. Just sitting, just breathing, is already a miracle. Acceptance doesn't make us weak, it gives us strength, because only when we stand firmly in this moment can we step with confidence into the next. So if life ever feels too heavy, try pausing. Place your hand on your chest, take a deep breath, and whisper, "This moment is enough." The problem may still remain, but your heart will soften, and that is the beginning of peace. If acceptance helps us stop resisting the present, then mindfulness is the doorway that lets us actually live fully in it. Have you ever eaten a meal and, by the end, realized you can't even remember what you just ate? Or sat with someone while your mind wandered off to tomorrow's worries, missing half of what they said? That's what it means to live on autopilot. The body is here, but the mind is everywhere else. Mindfulness is the call to come back home. It doesn't demand anything complicated. It simply asks us to be fully present in this moment. One breath, one sip of tea, one step. That's all, and yet it opens the door to an entire world of peace. I remember my first short retreat. The teacher said nothing lofty. He simply instructed, "Eat slowly." The meal was nothing special, just plain rice and a few vegetables. But as I chewed carefully, I noticed the gentle sweetness of the rice, the crisp freshness of the greens, and the miracle that eating alone could sustain this body. Before that, I thought happiness had to be somewhere far away. But in that moment, I realized peace can be found in every bite of food, every sip of water, every breath. Mindfulness isn't just sitting for hours in meditation, though that too has its place. Mindfulness can be practiced anywhere. When walking, feel your feet touching the ground. When washing dishes, notice the sound of water, the coolness on your skin. When speaking with someone, listen not just to the words, but to the feelings behind them. Mindfulness is living as if this moment is the only one we have. And why is it so important? Because most of our suffering comes from being trapped in the past or anxious about the future. We regret, "If only I had done it differently." We worry, "What if tomorrow goes wrong?" But the past is gone. The future hasn't arrived. Only the present is real. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." It sounds simple, but to live it, we need mindfulness. One of its greatest gifts is that it breaks the chain of automatic reactions. Think about how often anger rises and words spill out before we even know it, hurting someone we love, making choices we later regret. But mindfulness gives us a pause. Between the event and our reaction, it creates a small space. And in that space, wisdom can enter. I once heard a friend share that mindful breathing saved her relationship with her teenage daughter. Before, whenever her daughter spoke back, she would snap instantly. Over time, her daughter grew more distant, But after practicing just one breath before responding, she realized she didn't need to win every argument. What mattered was keeping the bond between them alive. One mindful breath changed the relationship. Do you see? Mindfulness doesn't remove life's challenges, but it gives us the clarity to walk through them with peace. And as we live this way, something beautiful happens. We begin to notice the small wonders we once overlooked. A flower by the roadside, a sudden smile, the sunlight filtering through leaves in the late afternoon. What once seemed ordinary becomes treasure. The Beatles sang, "Let it be." That's mindfulness too. Not fixing, not forcing, not rushing life to match our will. Just being here, seeing clearly, letting things be. When we do that, we taste freedom. If you'd like to begin, try something simple. Tomorrow morning, when you drink your coffee, give it just 2 minutes. No phone, no planning, no distractions. Just sit, breathe in the aroma, feel the warmth in your hands, savor the flavor. 2 minutes. Do it daily, and you may find the entire day unfolds differently. Mindfulness is the art of coming home, and that home is not somewhere else, it's this very moment. If impermanence reminds us that everything changes, and mindfulness teaches us to be present in this moment, then there is another step that helps us live more lightly, the art of letting go. When people hear the phrase, "let go," they often misunderstand it. They think it means being cold, detached, or cutting all ties. But in Buddhism, letting go, or non-attachment, is not about refusing to love. It is about loving differently, to love without clinging, without possession. Picture a small bird landing on your hand. If you close your fist and hold on tightly, it will struggle and fly away. But if you keep your palm open, giving it freedom, it may stay a little longer. And even when it flies off, you can smile because its presence, however brief, was already a gift. Love works the same way. When we cling to someone demanding they stay, insisting they live by our expectations, love slowly turns into control. Affection becomes possession. Joy becomes fear of loss. But when we love with freedom, we give the other person space to be themselves. As Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "You must love in such a way that the person you love feels free." I know this sounds difficult. Inside, there's always that voice whispering, "If I don't hold on, I'll lose them." But in truth, it's often the holding on that makes us lose them faster. And this doesn't only apply to romantic love. It's the same with our children, our parents, our friends, even our colleagues. They are not possessions. They walk beside us for a time, and one day they may leave. Our role is not to chain them, but to cherish the time they choose to stay. Letting go also applies to the way we hold material things. The house you live in, the car you drive, even the phone in your hand, they will all one day break down, pass on, or belong to someone else. If you cling too tightly, you'll suffer with every scratch and dent. But if you see them as tools, grateful for them while they last, then smile when they're gone, you'll live much lighter. Some may ask, but if I let go of everything, won't I lose my motivation to live, to work, to love? The answer is no. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Letting go doesn't mean we stop living. It means we live, work, and love fully, but without allowing attachment to dictate our happiness. We still care for our loved ones, but we don't burden them with the responsibility to make us happy. We still work hard, but we don't tie our worth to success or failure. We still enjoy what we have, but we don't let possessions define who we are. I once heard a story about a man who was deeply attached to his old car. He polished it every week, treated it almost like part of himself. One day, his son accidentally scratched it. The man exploded in anger, scolding his child harshly. But later, he sat alone and realized, the car is just a vehicle. My son is the true treasure, yet I hurt him over a scratch on metal. That day, he began to practice letting go. From then on, he lived more lightly. Do you see? Letting go doesn't take anything from us. It gives us freedom. Freedom from the fear of loss. Freedom from the pressure to control everything. Freedom to love without anxiety, to live without chains. The Beatles sang, "Let it be." That's what letting go is. Not forcing ourselves to forget, not suppressing emotions, but holding life with open hands, with a grateful heart. When someone arrives, we smile and say, "Welcome." When they leave, we smile and say, "Thank you." Letting go doesn't make us weaker. It makes our love more pure. It makes our lives more open. And in truth, only when we truly let go do we finally understand what it means to love and what it means to live. Perhaps one of the greatest challenges of modern life is this: impatience. We live in a world of instant, fast food, instant replies, internet so quick that even a 1-second delay feels unbearable. And without realizing it, we carry that restless energy into the way we live, the way we love, even the way we practice. We want results now, happiness now, peace now. But life doesn't move according to our schedule. A tree needs time to grow from seed into shade. A child needs years to mature. And a broken heart also needs its own seasons to heal. Buddhism teaches us patience is a form of wisdom. I remember the first time I tried to meditate. 10 minutes in, and my mind was already leaping everywhere. I grew frustrated. Why can't I be still? Other people can sit for hours. Why am I so weak? But the teacher just smiled and said, "Bamboo takes years to rise tall. The mind is the same. Each time you sit, even if you're calm for only a few seconds, that's already a seed. Don't be in a rush. Be patient. It will grow." That one sentence changed the way I saw myself. Do you see? So often our suffering doesn't come because life is slow, but because we keep demanding it to be fast. We want success right away, but forget that failure is the compost for growth. We want others to change instantly, but forget that even our own hearts need time. We want to overcome fear overnight, but forget that courage is a journey, not a single step. Think of the last time you were waiting, maybe in line, stuck in traffic, or checking your inbox for that one important email. What did you do? If you're like most people, you probably grew restless, checking the clock again and again, complaining in your mind. But notice the waiting itself wasn't the source of pain. The impatience was. The line didn't move faster, the cars didn't budge, the email didn't arrive any sooner. Yet, if you shift perspective, see it as a chance to breathe, to rest, to observe, then waiting stops being suffering. It becomes a pause, even a gift. The Beatles sang, "There will be an answer, let it be." That line is a reminder that sometimes what we need is not more effort, but more patience. The answer will come in its own time. Patience is just as vital in personal growth. You cannot force a beginner in meditation to find instant serenity. You cannot demand that someone grieving stop crying tomorrow. You cannot tell yourself, "By tomorrow, I'll be perfectly at peace." Transformation takes time, and patience is the kindness we give ourselves along the way. I once met a woman who lost her husband after 40 years together. In the early months, she tried to be strong. She told herself not to cry, that she had to get over it. But the more she forced herself, the more exhausted she became. One day, she finally allowed herself to be vulnerable, to grieve, to be sad. She whispered, "This pain also needs time." Only then did true healing begin. That is the strength of patience. It doesn't erase pain overnight, but it creates the path for pain to dissolve. In Buddhism, patience is not just waiting, it's a state of mind. Not rushing, not forcing, not imposing. Like tending a garden, you water, you care, and then you let the flowers bloom in their season. You can't pull the petals open with your hands. So if you are in a hard season, remind yourself, everything needs time, and I can be patient. If you're learning something new, give yourself permission to fail and to try again. If you're healing, allow your heart the months and years it needs to mend. Patience doesn't weaken us, it strengthens us, because we stop racing against life and begin walking with it. And when we do, life itself begins to feel gentler. A slow sunset, a warm cup of tea, a deep breath in the middle of waiting. All of these turn into gifts. So if you ever feel yourself rushing, remember that lyric, "There will be an answer, let it be." And smile, because the answer is already on its way. All it needs is a little patience. When I was younger, I used to think happiness came from being in control of my work, my relationships, my health, my future. I made detailed plans, clung tightly to what I had, and believed that control meant safety. But as I grew older, I realized control is only an illusion, and the harder I tried to hold on, the more exhausted I became. That's when I began to understand. True freedom comes when we learn to let go. Imagine yourself swimming in a river. If you fight against the current, you grow tired, drained, maybe even sink. But if you surrender, if you let the water carry you, you discover you can float with ease. Letting go in life is the same. It's not about abandoning effort, but about giving up the illusion that we can control everything. Many people confuse letting go with giving up, with indifference. But in truth, it's the opposite. Letting go means we still live, still work, still love wholeheartedly, but we no longer allow our clinging to dictate our joy. We work, but don't tie our worth to the outcome. We love, but don't treat the other as a possession. We enjoy, but don't lose ourselves in material things. I once heard a Zen story. A traveler saw a man carrying a heavy sack, sweating and struggling. Out of kindness, he offered to help. But when he took hold of the sack, the man wouldn't let go. Both of them ended up carrying it, making it twice as heavy. Life is like that. Often our suffering doesn't come from the weight itself, but from our refusal to release it. When we learn to let go, something miraculous happens. We discover freedom. Freedom from the fear of loss. Freedom from the burden of controlling others. Freedom from endless expectations. Take a look at yourself. Is there something you're gripping so tightly that it's causing you pain? Maybe a relationship, a title, an old dream. Be honest, and then ask, what would happen if I loosened my grip just a little? You might be surprised by the relief you feel. I once had a friend who was very successful in his career, but when his company collapsed, he fell into despair. He said, "I've lost everything." Years later, looking back, he admitted, "I didn't lose everything. I only lost the illusion that I could control the future. And losing that illusion gave me the freedom to begin again." Letting go is also a lesson in love. When we love without holding, love becomes clear and pure. When we allow the other to be themselves, love turns into a gift, not a chain. And strangely, When we release the fear of losing, love is free to blossom. The Beatles sang, "Whisper words of wisdom, let it be." That is freedom in letting go. We don't need to force life to follow our script. We don't need to fight the current. We only need to let it be and trust the wisdom that flows within it. Can you remember a time when you truly let go of a burden? Maybe after months of forgiveness, your heart suddenly felt lighter. Or when you released a dream that no longer fit and discovered the freedom to dream another one. That feeling, light as the wind, wide as the sky, that is the freedom letting go brings. So don't fear letting go. It doesn't make you lose, it makes you gain. You gain peace. You gain lightness. You gain freedom. And with that freedom, you finally learn what it means to live, to love, and to treasure every moment. Have you ever noticed that much of our suffering doesn't come from what is actually happening, but from the story we tell ourselves about it? When one door closes, we think, "My life is over." When someone leaves, we whisper, "I have nothing left to hold on to." But the truth is different. The problem isn't the present moment itself, it's our resistance to it and the expectations we place on it. Buddhism teaches, peace is not the absence of difficulty, it is the ability to live in harmony with difficulty. That is the art of acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean surrender. It doesn't mean giving up your dreams. It simply means seeing reality as it is, instead of demanding it to be something else. I remember one afternoon during a retreat, a woman asked the teacher, "I'm suffering because my husband has changed. He no longer loves me the way he once did. What should I do?" The teacher smiled gently and said, "First, accept that he has changed. Only then will you have the freedom to choose, to continue the journey together, or to let both of you walk your own paths. But if you keep clinging to the old image, you will suffer endlessly." It sounds simple, but in practice, it takes courage. In daily life, we have endless chances to practice acceptance. Waiting in a clinic, you can stew in impatience, or you can breathe and smile. When a plan falls apart, you can curse it, or you can see it as an invitation to learn something new. As age slows you down, you can mourn what's gone, or you can enjoy the ease that youth never allowed. Acceptance is a shift in perspective. The same event, seen with resistance, is torment. Seen with acceptance, it becomes part of the journey. The Beatles sang, "There will be an answer, let it be." That's the spirit of acceptance. Not every answer comes right away, but there is an answer, and it will arrive at the right time. There's a little story I love. A man walking along the road found a rock blocking his way. He grew angry, cursed, and tried to push it but couldn't. A child came by, sat for a moment, then quietly stepped around it. The rock didn't disappear, but the child kept moving. That is acceptance. It doesn't remove every obstacle, but it shows us how to pass without wounding ourselves further. So often we think, if only circumstances were different, I'd be at peace. But peace isn't found in circumstances, it's found in how we receive them. One person can live in a big house yet carry constant worry. Another can live simply and still radiate calm. The difference? The second person has learned acceptance, has learned to live in the present. And the present, if we pause long enough, is always enough. A deep breath, a cool glass of water, an afternoon with sunlight streaming through the window. These small things, once we accept them fully, are already happiness. I believe that when we truly accept, we discover a profound truth. Suffering is no longer the enemy, but the teacher. It teaches us humility. It teaches us to loosen our grip. It teaches us to live more deeply. So the next time life doesn't go your way, instead of asking, "Why me?" try asking, "What is this teaching me?" That simple shift softens the heart halfway. You see, peace is not something we need to chase far away. It is already here, in this moment waiting for us, the moment we stop resisting and simply accept. When we walk through this journey from recognizing suffering to understanding impermanence, to practicing mindfulness, learning to let go, cultivating patience, and embracing acceptance, we arrive at an important truth. Letting go is not giving up. It is discovering freedom right in the middle of life itself. Many people fear that if they let go, they'll lose their drive, that if they accept, they'll become passive. But the truth is, only when we release the useless struggle for control do we gain the strength to do what really matters, and to do it with a peaceful heart. Think back to a time when you tried to control everything. Weren't you exhausted? Every little change made you anxious. Every detail felt like a battle. But then, maybe there came a moment when you loosened your grip just a little. And strangely, that's when you felt lighter. Life stopped being a war and began to feel like a river you could trust. That is the deeper message of the Beatles in Let It Be. The song isn't telling us to sit idly by, it's inviting us to trust, to believe that even in the chaos, there is an answer. And that answer will come once we are calm enough to hear it. In Buddhism, this is called going with conditions to live with effort, yes, but without attachment to the outcome. We still plant seeds, we still live, work, and love with our whole heart, but we don't demand that the seed must sprout right away. We trust the natural unfolding. We let life open at its own pace. A teacher once told me, "We often think happiness is waiting somewhere ahead, but in truth, it can bloom right here, in the act of letting go." And I've found that to be true. When we sit down, take a deep breath, and stop forcing ourselves, we realize peace is already here, in this very moment. I had a friend once diagnosed with a terminal illness. At first, he fought with everything he had, desperately trying to change what could not be changed. He sank into despair. But one day, he said, "I accept. I don't know how much time I have left, but I want to live fully today." From that moment, he changed. He laughed more, loved more, and, strangely enough, even his health improved. He found freedom not by defeating his illness, but by letting go of his resistance. Letting go doesn't take something away from us. It gives us space, space to breathe, to smile, to love without fear, to live without chains. Do you see? From impermanence to mindfulness, from patience to acceptance, all of it leads us back to one place: freedom of the heart. Freedom from being bound by the past. Freedom from anxiety about the future. Freedom to live fully in the present, no matter what. When I hear the words, whisper words of wisdom, let it be, I imagine it as the voice of wisdom within each of us. A quiet voice that says, you don't have to control everything, just let go and trust. And when we do, a door opens. The door to a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. A peace no one can take away because it doesn't come from outside. It comes from within our very own heart. When you sit quietly after a long journey, do you notice your heart feels a little lighter? Maybe somewhere in the back of your mind, the melody of "Let It Be" is still playing like a soft whisper, reminding you. We've traveled through many turns, like a winding river. There were dark stretches where we faced suffering, loss, and the truths no one can escape. Then the river carried us into clearer waters where we discovered impermanence, the reality that life is changing every second. Along this flow, we learned to breathe, to pay attention to the present moment that is mindfulness. And then we discovered we can love without clinging, live without chains, that is letting go. Of course, no path is straight. We've had to practice patience. Just as no flower can be forced to bloom, the heart also needs time to heal. And each time we paused to accept, we found a little more peace. When all of these pieces come together, a deeper truth appears. Freedom doesn't come from controlling life, but from knowing when to release. Happiness isn't found in making everything perfect. It's found in smiling right in the middle of the unfinished. And perhaps peace was never far away. It's right here, in the simple act of breathing with this moment, in learning to let things be just as they are. In the end, peace is not found in holding on, but in the courage to let go. Happiness doesn't come from everything going according to plan. It comes from our ability to smile, even as life changes. So if your heart feels weary today, whisper to yourself those 4 simple words: let it be. And who knows, maybe right there, a new door to peace will open. If this message touched you, I'd love for you to share it, or leave a comment below. What have you let go of that made your heart feel lighter?